Okay, so we are live. Hello, everybody joining us today. My name is Tinuke Ayewale. I'm the host for today's program for the this One World Africa's Dyslexia Tribe series, and today we'll be talking about the psychological impact of neglect with respect to neurodiversity. And with us today, we have our special guest of honor, which is Miss Ibukunlua Bello. Miss Ibukunlua Bello is a clinical psychology lecturer and researcher with Redeemers University, Ede, Osun State, Nigeria. Over the past 5 years, Ms. Ibukunlua has demonstrated her ability to assist students in increasing their academic efficacy using creative and all-inclusive lecture strategies. Outside of academia, Ms. Ibukunlua provides psychological support through consultancy and through volunteerism. She is a member of the Nigerian Psychological Association, the Nigerian Association of Clinical Psychologists, Institute of Information Management Africa, and also a member of the International Society of Substance Abuse Professionals. So without further ado, I would like to bring Ms. Ibukunlua Bello right off stage to give a brief introduction about to introduce the or give a brief intro into the topic for today, which is psychological impact of neglect on neurodiversity individuals, neurodivergent individuals. Pardon me.
Hello, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So today our expectations of you is to understand what neglect is and what causes neglect in neurodivergent individuals, and the possible realities of life for neurodivergent individuals if neglected, and how that hugely impacts their lives, as well as how to provide for them to reduce such psychological impact. And as a psychologist as well, what you would you consider neurodiversity as being embraced in the Nigerian culture? So I'll let you have the floor from here.
All right, thank you. So, we're looking into the psychological impact of neglect on neurodiversity. First of all, we have to establish that neurodiversity talks about the variations in how people think through things, how they understand and learn things. And so, our world is generally neurodivergent. And on this spectrum of neurodivergency, we have people who are neurotypical, who are like the people we classify as the normal people within society. And then there are those who are neurodivergent. And over time, there have been different controversies as to how neurodivergence should be treated. There's been over time also an observation that there's been a lot of neglect because people do not understand the concept of neurodivergence, and they do not understand the needs that neurodivergents have. They have been a lot of mistreatment, there's been a lot of neglect. And so what is neglect? That's inappropriate care or insufficient care for an individual. And neglect because the educational system, the learning systems that we have, the official systems, professional systems are mostly tailored towards the needs of the neurotypical, not putting into consideration the fact that there are some people who have a different learning ability. They're not necessarily disabled, but they have a different learning ability. And so their typical strengths may not, the strength of the neurotypicals may not be the strength of the neurodivergence. And so we have to consider that there's going to be differences in strengths, and however, there are certain differences in how they comprehend, and how they learn. And so systems ought to be put in perspective um, to ensure that these people are catered to, this neurodivergence. And from studies, it shows that about 10% of the average population is neurodivergent. So why do we have systems that will further make such people feel as though they are not normal? The truth is, everybody is normal. Everybody is different brained. However, some people, um, systems ought to be created to ensure that there's an inclusion for neurodivergence. And so, why does neglect occur? Why does neglect occur for neurodivergent? It happens that because people do not understand um, neurological differences in neurology, how the brain of the person or who is autistic, for instance, or who has dyslexia functions, the people tend to not know how to care for them appropriately, and then label them and believe that they are probably lazy or do not just want to function in certain capacities, and then emphasize their weaknesses above their strengths. And so this has been a major cause of this has been a major cause of neglect over the years. And so, how do we, what are the effects that this neglect could have on an individual? For instance, if you do not feel like if you feel like you do not belong to a part of society, if you feel like you're not a part of society, there's so many consequences that it can have on how you feel about yourself, on your achievement, level of achievement generally, whether at work, whether in school, whether how you interact with people. And so a sense of neglect that we have communicated, a sense of indifference in some cases, a sense of unimportance that we have communicated to issues revolving around neurodivergence has affected people who have come to identify themselves, because of a better understanding that they have of themselves as neurodivergent. And so in some cases, and in many cases actually, it impacts on self-esteem level of people who are neurodivergent. We have systems that make people feel like, for instance, for dyslexics, if you cannot read or write, properly, as what society would label, they it happens that they feel a certain level, the self-esteem is lowered because they just feel like they don't have a good comprehension again of their self-worth, and their self-image drops in comparison to other people. So because they start to compare themselves and just feel like, oh, I'm not normal, I'm not part of the norm, I'm not part of what everybody is like, and so their self-esteem is largely affected. It can also cause them to engage in negative coping mechanisms. We've found instances where, because people do not feel like a part of society, people feel sidelined, they may want to engage in unhealthy coping mechanisms, including substance abuse, which could further lead to some other negative effects mentally, physically, and even impair their interactions with others. Some may involve in risky sexual behaviors, which could, be as a form of defense, against the neglect that they feel from society, and trying to make meaning and make sense out of the prejudice that they feel from society. Some other people experience a high level of anxiety, because they don't know what to anticipate, and from all of the um, from all that they get from society, the fact that they are not put at the forefront could heighten their level of anxiety about situations, about interactions, about prospects, life prospects, and how best they feel they can contribute as members of society. Another thing that this neglect can cause negative impacts of neglect for neurodivergence is also that it could affect their academic self-efficacy if we do not come to the understanding that some people are wired to learn differently and we do not have an all-inclusive system. We find out that we keep breaking people and making them feel as though they do not have the capacity to function within the academic setting, which is a lie. It's just because the systems do not provide what is needed for them to function. And so if we can provide the right tools for people to function and understand that there is diversity in learning processes, we will have a number of people who do not reach a high level of academic self-efficacy, not because they cannot do it, but because the systems do not permit them to do it. And so um, it is important that we understand that learning is diverse, learning is not straitjacket, learning should be all inclusive, basically. It should be all inclusive. We should allow people to express themselves in the capacity that they know how to do best. We should be able to amplify people's strengths rather than focusing on what we presume are weaknesses. Also, it could lead a number of people who are neurodivergent into anger tantrums and all of that, because it's a way of trying to express their frustration with systems that are not including them. It's a way of expressing frustration that is coming as a result of neglect, um, as a result of the fact that there's no preferences, there's no privileges as such that should be in place. There's no sense of belongingness. So anger may be a reaction, and anger definitely negatively impacts any individual. It could have further it could further affect them behaviorally, affect them in interactions, affect them in emotional ability to coordinate their emotions and express themselves properly. It could also impact on social skills. And so you find some people who are, because of the sense of neglect that they've experienced, because of particularly in the educational system, you find people who feel like they cannot even express themselves because they feel like they're not a part of this system, and so nobody wants to hear what I have to say because it's different from what every other person has to say. And so it doesn't sound like the typical. It doesn't I don't I'm not able to express myself in the general sense, like what every other person is able to do. And so it brings this sense of social withdrawal, like let every other person have the floor. They know how to do it better. Let me be in the shadows. And so we have people, we're losing people who are able to give us the best of the best because we have described and reframed the best into something that is limited. And so we're not allowing this diversity, these variations to show forth because we're just indifferent. It's either they don't know how to do things better, or we're giving a benchmark that is wrong because the majority is the neurotypical. And so so these are some of the things that the psychological impacts that could result from neglect. And so why do we want to continue to encourage this? We are losing people, I mean, capacity building. We're losing people's self-esteem because we're trying to hold on to systems that do not necessarily work. We are undermining people's abilities because we're refusing to see them as differently abled, and we're labeling them as disabled people. I mean, some people go into depression because of this sense of neglect. They Even the things that they find pleasure in doing, the previously pleasurable activities that they have identified that they have capacity for, which may not be involving a lot of interactions, we may not be involving which may not be involving having written expressions and all of that. We could put them in a state where they begin to feel worthless, begin to lose their sense of self, begin to feel like the world has nothing for them and they have nothing for the world. And so why hang on a little longer? And so some people will then go into a state of depression and then transcend and start to have suicidal ideations like, if I can't really do it, then what's the essence of staying here? What's the essence of hanging on?
Wow.
And then some people, slowly from depression start to have suicidal attempts. And then some people, it happens that we've had cases of suicide emanating from the fact that there is widespread neglect of the neurodivergent. And so the fact that certain people are differently abled and have a lot of, in many cases, have a lot of artistic light to them that is under tapped, should show us that we have to create systems that work better. We have to um, focus, like put a cursory look, shed light on neurodivergence, not for pity's sake. There's no need to pity neurodivergence. They're just differently abled. That's all. It's not a pity party. We're saying that we need a fair play. We're saying that we want everybody on the same playground. Everybody, if your best tool is a football, use it. If your best tool is a pen, use it. If your best tool is art, use it. So it's just like an all-inclusive system. And so talking from the educational sector in which I operate, I believe that the classroom should not be one that places a preference on those whose learning style is limited to reading and writing, because you would undermine the ability of those who are more of auditory learners. You will undermine the ability of those who are kinesthetic learners, those who need activity to learn. So, what do you want to do in a setup where you have a variety of students? You want to include everybody in the learning process. You want everybody's strengths to be amplified at different points in time. And so you want to present inclusion in your teaching system, in how you had address your classes. And so you would have to make materials, lecture materials, inclusive. You have your text, you have things that have a lot of pictures for those who comprehend things better by seeing a lot of displays and colors and all of that, and activity active learners. You also want to include voice notes or take physical classes so that people can hear your voice and have um, comprehension, a better comprehension, since that's their learning style. You also want to have activity, group activity in some cases, where you have people pieced in groups together so that they can, interact, rub minds, and help some people who are better able to learn that way to do that. You also give hands-on, make your classes hands-on, so that a certain number of people are not benefiting much more than others. I
Mm.
mean, if we know that this is not a weakness in itself, this is not a weakness, but our society, our social structure can make it a weakness and can undermine the strength of people who are already strong, then we will find a way to work around it and to restructure the systems so that neglect is no longer widespread, and so that we inclusion is what is the replacement for neglect. And so we need to create systems in the workplace. I mean, because a lot more people are neurotypical, so everything just seems to go in that line, and that's society kind of does this stratification across board. It happens, the rich, the poor, the I mean, there's just always some stratification here, there. And so when it now comes to neurodiversity, we're finding the same
Mm,
thing play out. Even in personality, you find a play of this. You find, oh, maybe in some climes, the extroverted people have more of the flaw than the introverted people. But we cannot, if we want a society that will do better by us, we need to find a way to appreciate and celebrate the strength of other people that are not, other people that tend or that are more vulnerable
mm,
to um, not being celebrated. We need to
mhm,
change the dynamics. We need to do something more. And so, how can you be a part of this as an individual, as a group, whatever it is? How can we reduce neglect? How can we not be a party to it? How can we not be at the forefront of the neglect that neurodivergence experience within society? One of the first things is that we have to ensure that the interest of neurodivergence, wherever we are, is fully represented. We are not the ones to begin to talk people down when we find out that, oh, there's, or for instance, you're dealing with a child or you're dealing with an adult, it's like, oh, this person cannot even properly write. I mean, why is this person missing this word? Awareness, basically, we should get information and find out that, oh, there are certain people who have this kind of disability. So we're not taking away the fact that, okay, this is a form of disability, but we're just amplifying the fact that this set of people are differently abled. Did you get what I was trying to communicate?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so we are just trying to, and so we're going to be able to identify, okay, that this may be their areas. We understand that we're going to amplify their strengths, and we're also going to get a deeper understanding of their weaknesses so that we can create structures that can help, you know, to work on, I mean, create tools, not necessarily structures this time, create tools that can assist with those weaknesses. And we're not just going to, be hounding at these people for these weaknesses. So for instance, people with dyslexia, there's several applications that can help and not make the fact that their writing may not be, to the letter. There are certain apps like Grammarly can help you correct missing words and all of that. And so we shouldn't overly put it at the forefront and make these people feel like they have no other ability. The dyslexic mind is a creative mind, filled with so much ability to put so many things together at once and do a lot of things at once. Those are things that we can celebrate about the dyslexic mind, rather than um, putting an emphasis on the fact that, oh, you put a double D on this word, you put a double R on this word. So we first have to um, understand that the human brain is diverse, and that the neurodivergents are differently abled, and they're different. The fact that they're differently abled should be celebrated.
Mm,
Also, we should identify that in this their difference may be certain weaknesses that we can ensure that our systems, or whatever it is that we offer, or however it is that we reach out to these people, we are not the ones who are pulling them down based on their weaknesses, but we're going to make our systems more inclusive based on the understanding we have of these weaknesses, and provide tools and provide information, provide structures that can work in favor of these weaknesses to convert them into strengths.
mm. This is such an excellent delivery on the impact of neurodiversity, positively and negatively, especially the enduring psychological impacts that it could have. And I especially appreciate that you mentioned how caregivers or even people that are friends and family members can also pay better attention to neurodivergent people, especially their psychological need of feeling inclusive and feeling assisted as well, properly assisted with their academic endeavor as well. So I have one question that I want to ask you. There is this, if you could help the public correct this erroneous myth about neurodivergent being also being a disability, or is neurodivergent are neurodivergent individuals disabled? Would you consider them disabled, or and what's the difference between their needs and the needs of and people with special needs as well? If you could just help me with help the public as well answer shed more lights on that. Thank you.
Okay. So the question is that neurodivergent disabled? No, they're not disabled. However, the way in which they think and process and learn are different from the neurotypicals. There are certain things in their learning process that is different, doesn't make it a disability. However, there are, because a lot of the systems that we have are based on what is neurotypical, there are certain tools and structures that must be put in place to help amplify this these things. I mean, this that will be in place to help amplify and help to
Leverage
put
them.
them, I didn't get that.
Leverage on their strengths.
Yes, to leverage on their strengths, to help them leverage on their strengths, and not necessarily amplify certain things that are divergent, that are different from the neurotypical. So if they are not able to do certain things as the neurotypical will, there should be structures in place that would help them, get along that while still amplifying their strengths.
That is excellent. Thank you. And how about the difference between people with, and I know you already slightly touched on this earlier on, but just for people who feel like, oh, so what if now that I know that the acceptance stage of I think I am neurodivergent, and I probably go for diagnosis, and then I'm confirmed that I'm neurodivergent as well, and then the feeling of the thought of them feeling like they are also special needs. How can you address the difference between those that are neurodivergent and those that have special needs as well? It's what's the thin line between people feeling like they have special needs and feeling like they are neurodivergent as well, because people tend to associate that because of the kind of society we have. I don't know if you understood my question.
Yes, yes, I do. I do. Yeah, so people who are neurodivergent are not people who have special needs, and the neurodivergent is just for special needs. They require more attention. They may require an individualized learning plan to help them comprehend what goes on in the academic climb. Some may not even be educable in some cases, but they may be trainable, and so diagnosis usually would assist in helping you know what exactly, because even when we are talking about neurodivergence, there are different um, different conditions that fall under neurodivergence. So they have different manifestations, and so you also have, through a proper diagnostic procedure, you would be able to clearly identify whatever the condition is. However, those with special needs have have a severe, in some cases, neurodevelopmental condition that may not help, that may cause them not to be able to access formal education, as it were, and they may have to go through an individualized learning plan But for the neurodivergent, we just need an inclusion within the formal settings in many cases, so that it can be all inclusive, so that it can be able to embrace the diversities in learning processes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I also want to ask you another question. The neurodivergent brain, is it permanently conditioned to be that way? Because now that we know that neurodivergence is not a disability, it just simply means that you are differently abled and you definitely have strengths that need to be properly harnessed, and you also need a lot more, need to be placed in a lot more inclusive academic environment in order to be able to thrive in the academic pursuit. So with people who may think that about neurodiversity and how long they have to struggle for it, especially when they're out of the academic system and having to go out into the world, into the corporate world. And is it something? Is the brain conditioned to? Is it a brain conditioning that is a lifetime conditioning, or is it something that you just have to learn your strengths, learn how to leverage on your strengths for your weaknesses, and in the course of your academic pursuit, find means to find means that basically help you thrive, that recognizes, that is inclusive enough to recognize your academic weaknesses and help you thrive. I feel like that was a very long question, but did you get this?
I feel like I can pick up the answer from your question already.
Yes, I felt like I
So
answered it already. I was trying to throw
let
the
me
question
just
to you for the topic, and then I answered it.
let me add to the answer
Okay.
that um, emphasis on differently able to, you must be able to come to a level of um, believe in yourself, amplify your esteem of who you are, and understand that certain know the tools that work, and know the tools that you can use that would help you play on a level ground. If you don't feel comfortable with an email, for instance, in the work setting, make a phone call. If you if you have options of smaller meetings as opposed to larger settings, if and you have the option, go for that. So understand self-awareness helps you to come to a level also of self-acceptance. Being neurodivergent is not a disability. We're all on a spectrum, and then we just have to realize that even within the neurotypical, we will find that people are different. So it's just human brain wiring. There's their differences. So understand yourself, understand that you are not disabled, understand that you have um, the ability to learn in more creative ways and find out the creative ways that work for you in your learning process.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that addition. Thank you. So I think you pretty much addressed a lot of my questions already. Um, trying to um, how can I phrase this? So how would you I just want you to talk a little more about this, and I just not to answer my question in the process of asking. How how can you encourage someone who's already out of the academic world and is currently in the corporate sector to accept the differences that they have, or even if they're still, I mean, okay, this goes for both ways, those still in the developmental stages and those already out of the academic world and currently in the corporate world. How can you encourage them to accept the differences that they have neurologically, and especially when they have already formed certain behaviors, such as being defensive and being controlling, to basically do better, to basically be better? How can you encourage them to accept their differences and, if possible, seek to understand more about their strengths and how to basically do better as a person? Just, do you understand my question?
I can't hear you very clearly, so I'm struggling to understand.
Oh, can you hear me now?
But if I got that, you asking about people. You were asking about people who are outside of the academia,
Yes,
and
please.
okay, and probably you said. I'm sorry. I will need you to go over the question again.
Okay. I'm also struggling to hear you. I think the line is currently breaking.
Okay,
So I'll go over the question again.
but it's fine now. I can hear you now.
Okay, I can hear you clearly now too. So I'll go over the question again. I was asking with respect to, I actually divided the question into two for those who in the academic, still in the development phase of the academic learning, and for those who are already in the corporate world. How do they come to, if you can answer the question in two folds, how do they come to accept their differences, especially when they have already formed certain defensive behavior towards their actual uniqueness, neurological uniqueness as well. How can they first of all come to acceptance of accepting that difference and also seeking help, looking for ways to seek help and how to harness their uniqueness?
Okay,
Did you get my
so have
question?
they? Yes, I think I did this time. So I struggled to, but I
I
picked it.
know.
So it said that people um, um, who have gone past the typical academic system, and then are professionals maybe, and are struggling to with self acceptance, and having challenges with self acceptance, and this is proven by past failures maybe, and so and well, one of the things that I would say is that self apart from the fact that like I mentioned before, self awareness helps you to come to the point of self acceptance, and so if, if you dig more into yourself and identify society may society structures may amplify weaknesses, but if an individual takes time to evaluate himself or herself, you find out that you have certain strengths, and you are able to celebrate those strengths. And so, first of all, what kind of belief systems you have about yourself? Are you very self-critical? Do you feel the world is against you? Are there certain beliefs that you hold that you feel, and this applies for everybody in general? Are there certain beliefs that you hold that you know that may hamper your desire to um, be your best? So you first have to address your belief systems. You have to address how you believe, how you see yourself, what you say to yourself, and that way you're able to um, come more to a place. Not just you're not having unrealistic ideas about yourself, or you are realistically evaluating your strengths and your weaknesses, finding how you are indispensable to any system it is at all that you're in, despite the fact that certain people may not have come to that understanding. But if you yourself are aware and you take out the time to just um, understand yourself and love yourself for who you are, self love is is important, self-care is important, and sometimes neglect transcends beyond other people neglecting you. Sometimes or
mm,
structures or systems neglecting you. Sometimes the neglect is a neglect of self. And so
mm,
also it has to be important that you do not neglect yourself. You come to an understanding of your strengths and your weaknesses, and you celebrate your wins, no matter what it is, small wins, big wins, and create structures around yourself, create systems for yourself that helps you amplify your strengths and your weaknesses, despite whatever it is that may surround. And so, and even if I emphasize learning, we learn in and out of the four walls of school. So, I mean, every experience, everything that we do involves learning. So, understand your learning style, understand your learning capacity, work with that, and make peace with make peace with yourself, make peace with your abilities, and
mm.
I feel like that's a starting point for whatever it is that an individual seeks to launch on.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. You have pretty much addressed every single um, extensively addressed every single point under neurodiversity and the differences that people should anticipate and expect and appreciate as well, and especially harness when it comes to neurodivergent patients as well, neurodivergent individuals as well. So with that, I would like to um, I think we're done right now, and just thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for being with us today, for joining us today, and for being with us today. I am um, just a moment.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't really hear you clearly though.
Can you hear me? Listen to me. Just a moment. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today here at Wonderful Care. Thank you so much for joining us on this live, and we started about 30 minutes late from the live, and I think we'll bring this to the close. Thank you. We appreciate your presence today, and we appreciate you having to educate us so well, largely on the topic of neurodiversity. And we I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, Miss Willow.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for sharing this session on.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, and to our audience, also have a wonderful weekend and have a wonderful evening as well.
All right. You
All
too.
right. Bye bye.
Bye.
Oh.